All right, let's take a look at some blind coaching resumes. And as I went through this, I gave away who these guys are because I listed who their quarterbacks were. But pay attention to the similarities between these four coaching candidates. So this guy's 63 years old, 18 years of head coaching experience in the NFL. Regular season record 180 wins, so that's 10 a year. 113 losses, that's a 61% winning percentage. 13 and 11 playoff record. One Super Bowl ring. The quarterback's giving it away, Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. So that is obviously John Harbaugh, who is the most desirable candidate that is out on the market after the Ravens moved away from him. Again, you've had Joe Flacco and Lamar Jackson. Those are two really good quarterbacks, but you've won 10 games a year for 18 years.
Well, yeah, that's super, super impressive. And what it tells you, and the great coaches, which I think Harbaugh is, he will tell you win with people. And those two quarterbacks have been very successful. And you can look at it this way. For me, Joe Flacco is kind of the extreme version of a quarterback you win with, right? He's a guy who gets the ball around, he manufactured, he distributes it very well. He's a game manager who can make some big throws. And once again, I don't use game manager as a negative connotation. So he's had that kind of guy. And then he had Lamar Jackson, who's a guy you win because of. He's one of those few guys who's elite. Lamar's always been one of my favorites, especially when he became the pocket passer he is. So, again, the culture, all that kind of stuff, it's easier to have a culture when you have great players. But the culture is not what you say, it's what you do. It's the day in, day out routine. If you look at Harbaugh, if you look at all these guys, as that caller said, the alpha, and I've used that word a bunch, these guys are in charge. They're in charge of who's on the field, when, who they're drafting, etc. So, yeah, those quarterbacks will tell you a lot about all four of these guys, I bet.
All right, so the next guy is 62 years old. He also has 18 years of head coaching experience, 184 and 108, so 63% winning percentage in the regular season, 500 in the playoffs, 9 and 9, has a Super Bowl ring. Drew Brees, Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, Bo Nix, quarterbacks that have played for him both recently and as far back as he goes in his 18 years. It's Sean Payton, whose Broncos are the #1 seed in the AFC. But again, similar playoff record, similar regular season record, and a Super Bowl ring compared to Harbaugh.
Just another guy who's in charge, right? Another guy who is going to dictate who he gets. If you look back to the Russell Wilson, how that Russell Wilson wasn't his guy. Obviously, Russell Wilson wasn't in his prime. But when I look at that, again, it speaks to the day in, day out grind, right? In charge of draft picks, how you practice, how much you hit in practice, what does your depth chart look like? The importance of, when I look at Bo Nix, there's very few quarterbacks you win because of. And I don't think Bo Nix is one of those guys. But what I do think is, he's a piece of the pie. And if you're a quarterback you win because of, you're a bigger piece of the pie. But you can win with guys that you can win with. And Bo Nix is a great example of distributing the football, play great defense, protect the football, etc. So the Browns aren't as far away if they can get a quarterback they can win with. I don't know how many guys out there you can win because of. And those guys are few and far between. And the ones out there now are signed and are going to stay with their teams because their organizations know as well.
All right, so the next quarterback on this list, or next coach on this list, rather, 53 years old, so he's younger. He's head coach 19 years. 193 and 114, again, 63% winning percentage, 8 and 11 in the playoffs, 1 Super Bowl ring. Roethlisberger, and then more recently, Wilson and Aaron Rodgers. We're talking about Mike Tomlin, who will coach against the Texans tonight, and there's some thought if he doesn't win that, he might be moving on. Has never had a losing season, which in 19 years in the NFL is ridiculous. But again, you had Roethlisberger for most of those years, and then he's found a way to be about 500.
Well, the idea of like Mike Tomlin or LaFleur, these guys being on the hot seat, a guy like Mike Tomlin, that's completely irrational to me. You're talking about a guy who's never had a losing season in a league where it's hard to win games. As Browns fans, we know that it's so hard to win games. These guys are all so good. So comparable. That's why any given Sunday they can all beat each other. That doesn't happen in any level of football, every level of football. So Mike Tomlin's the guy. Once again, the thing you love about Mike Tomlin, and I love this about the Steelers and the Ravens, is that the Steelers, when they draft people, you go, yeah, that's a Steelers guy. Why? Because they fit Mike Tomlin and Chuck Noll. They fit all these guys' kind of mentality of toughness. and accountability. And maybe they're not 5 stars coming out of high school, but they're guys who produce, are tough, and fit the scheme and kind of fit what the Steelers want on and off the field. You know, a guy like Mike Tomlin, you take guys like that for granted. You think winning's easy. It's kind of like LeBron. When LeBron was here in Cleveland, you're just going to get to the finals. These things some of these coaches do, they're really hard to do. Mike Tomlin's a great example of that. He's an outstanding coach, and he's been outstanding ever since he's been in the league.
All right, the final one we're going to look at is a guy that's still out there. He's 62 years old, 18 years head coaching experience, 174, 112, and 2, so 61% winning percentage, 11-11 in the playoffs, a Super Bowl ring. Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott, more recently, his quarterbacks. It's Mike McCarthy, and I've heard people say they don't want Mike McCarthy because he's always had a good quarterback, and he hasn't done much with a good quarterback. He's gone to the playoffs with a good quarterback, and he averages right around 10 wins a season. I don't understand how people don't put Mike McCarthy in the same vein as Harbaugh, Tomlin, and Payton. We just look at the numbers, and they're about the same.
Yeah, not only are they the same, but it's kind of one of those things you take it for granted, right? This guy's only won 10 games a year. Think about that. You win 10 games a year, you're in the playoffs every year, or almost every year. And the thing about a guy like, again, you're talking about an old school coach who's going to be in charge. He's going to be a play caller, most likely. He will be a guy who has his hands in on that offense side of the ball. He's a guy that you bring in a veteran guy. Those kind of guys aren't intimidated by a Jim Schwartz. Maybe he likes the Jim Schwartz scheme. But, you know, maybe he doesn't. And if that's his case, then he wouldn't want, you know, he'll find his own guys. But, again, Mike McCarthy is a brilliant offensive mind. And I will say this on both ends of it. Winning with a quarterback, or, you know, when people say he's only won with a great quarterback, or he can't get the most out, we all only win with quarterbacks. You have to have a quarterback. You have to have the right personnel to be successful. Some guys can stretch it and maximize it, but look at the teams that are playing. The teams that are playing have elite quarterbacks. The teams that make it to the conference championships, most of the time, always have elite quarterbacks. Or they have a great quarterback who you can win with, who has great special teams and defense. So, you know, he's an outstanding coach and a guy, in terms of organization and structure and foundation, guy you got to look at for sure.